Shalom, I'm Izzy, the founder of Holy Language Institute at holylanguage.com, and welcome to this introduction to the Mishnah and also to a new series of lessons that we are doing, Mishnah Snapshots. I'm really excited about this series, and it's definitely coming from something that I'm personally very passionate about right now and studying. So, the Mishnah. Surrounded by urban legends, everyone has an opinion on it, but few, I've noticed, have actually read it. Here's a picture from one of the oldest manuscripts of the Mishnah that we have. Jesus kept it. The Romans outlawed it. The entire Talmud is commentary on it. And Judaism today is based on it. As you can see, here's another copy of the Mishnah with some old drawings depicting Jewish law. The Mishnah and the New Testament come from the same Jewish world, and they have way more in common than you would think. Welcome to my new series, Mishnah Snapshots, and yes, definitely say that fast, looking specifically at how the Mishnah sheds light on the New Testament. These startlingly personal glimpses of Yeshua of Nazareth through the lens of ancient Jewish law won't just give you a new perspective on the Bible. They'll make your relationship with Yeshua and with his Jewish people better than ever. Almost like this, but if you could imagine a Jewish Jesus instead of a Catholic Jesus, you're starting to get the idea of Mishnah snapshots. More like this. If you like explosions, you're going to love these lessons because we're going to be blowing urban legends out of the water at every turn. So sit down and pay attention because this. Real men sit and watch explosions happen. Here's some pictures for you to help you get ready for some urban legends to be blown out of the water. So you may need to brace yourself and hang on to your seat. Before we start looking at specific intersections between the Mishnah and the New Testament, I'm going to take a couple lessons to talk about what the Mishnah is all about. Most of us actually have almost no sniff, and we've only gone by hearsay. Here's some questions we're going to be talking about in the next couple lessons, including this one. What exactly is the Mishnah? And what does the word Mishnah mean anyway? How was the Mishnah developed? And why? And isn't Mishnah oral law or something? This isn't about dental hygiene, is it? The answer to that question is no, it isn't, but I know that you want to see a couple funny memes about dental hygiene, so here they are for you, because this is the only part of these classes that are going to be about that kind of oral law. All right, so let's get back to real Mishnah. The final question we're going to be talking about is, what did Yeshua think about the Mishnah, and how does that affect us? So here's our first big question. What does Mishnah actually mean? The word Mishnah doesn't actually mean oral law or oral Torah. It literally means repetition. Repetition. Mishnah comes from the verb shana, from which we also get the number 2, shnaim. And do feel free to pause this lesson and review these Hebrew words as we go over them. If it's new to you, I guess we could say do some Mishnah, do some repetition of these words. This probably refers to how the Mishnah was originally transmitted. It was taught word of mouth and repeated until it was memorized. You can imagine rabbis sitting with their disciples and repeating something, teaching something orally, word of mouth, and then repeating it until they could quote it word for word, and it was memorized by them. Here's an example from the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, of this verb having the sense of repetition. We read in Genesis chapter 41, verse 32, Joseph is talking to Pharaoh. Now, as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, and when we look in the Hebrew here, we read Ve'al Hishanot HaChalom. A chalom is a dream, so the chalom, the dream, was shanad. It was repeated. This would be an example for you of this verb being used in the Torah. Here's one more fascinating example of this word. Here it's not used as a verb, it's used as a noun. In the book of Deuteronomy, we read, "It shall come about when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a" what? "A copy of this Torah." Guess what the Hebrew word is there for copy? We'll read it right here. V'chatav, so he shall katav, he shall write, lo, for himself, at Mishneh, there's our word Mishneh, like Mishnah, ha-Torah, so a Mishnah, a repetition or copy of the Torah hazot, this. So this teaching is Torah. So those are two examples of this Hebrew word in its verb form and its noun form in the Torah itself. And again, both of these words, they're related to the number 2, shnaim in Hebrew, and they have this sense of a copy or a repetition. Hopefully these memes will help you to lock some of these Hebrew words in your long-term memory. Humor is good for that, yo dog. I heard you like repetition and yo dog memes. So I put the same quote in the same quote so you can read the same quote while you read the same quote. Makes a point, then beats it to death with annoying repetition. Makes a point and then repeats it. Repeats the point. You get it. Considering that Mishnah is related to the Hebrew word for 2, it's probably not surprising that Mishnah also means second. Here's an example of this, again, in the Torah, in the book of Genesis, first book in the Torah. And we read here with reference, again, actually, to Joseph, in the story of Joseph, that Pharaoh had him ride in his what? His second chariot. And the word there is Mirkevet, his chariot, Hamishna, the second. So you can see there his second chariot. There are other places where this word is used, for instance, to refer to the second in command. Why is the Mishnah referred to as second? Because, as the preface to the Mishnah published by Judaica Press in 1964 states, the Mishnah is second in importance to the Torah. Take note of that. We're going to come back to that later. So your first big takeaway is that the Hebrew word Mishnah means repetition. I repeat, it means repetition. And secondly, it means second. So the second meaning is that it means second. And a bonus takeaway, Mishnah doesn't actually mean oral law. That's something of an urban myth. Urban Mishnah, we could say. So here's the second question we're going to talk about in this first introductory lesson. What is the Mishnah? We talked about what the Hebrew word Mishnah means. Now let's talk about what the Mishnah actually is. Essentially, the Mishnah is the earliest historical record of how the Jewish people interpreted and applied the Torah. Here's an example of this from a more recent publication of the Mishnah with commentary, notes, and pictures. I love pictures. Actually, this has some pictures too, just kind of older style and slightly more abstract, I guess you could say. Much of the Mishnah is case law. So a legal question is raised. Remember, of course, that the Torah is, it's teaching, it's instruction. That's literally what the Hebrew word means, like the sense of direction. But there's definitely a lot of legal matter in there also. There are commandments, there are laws and statutes, there are judgments and ordinances, mitzvot, chukim and mishpatim, all kinds of different kinds of laws. So anyways, that's much of what much of the Mishnah is, case law. Legal question is raised, differing opinions are noted, and finally, a majority decision is reached. Sometimes a precedent is also listed, either the specific situation prompting the question to begin with, or a case illustrating it. This is called a ma'aseh. The Hebrew word ma'aseh comes from the verb asa, to act or do. The plural of ma'aseh is ma'asim. So a ma'aseh, in the case of the Mishnah, it's like a precedent, but the ma'aseh, it's most literally like a work or an act or a deed. And the plural, as you now know, is ma'asim. Don't worry, in this case it is precedent. And it's probably just a good thing that Chuck Norris isn't Jewish. As a side note, this gives us a fuller understanding of the Acts of the Apostles, the book in the New Testament, which in Hebrew is called the Ma'aseh HaShlichim. So the Ma'asim of, we'd say Ma'aseh to say Ma'asim of, the Shaliachs, the sent ones, the emissaries. Notably, the book of Acts contains several precedents and legal decisions arrived at by the sages of the early Messianic community, Acts chapter 15 being a prime example. So you can just imagine the Ma'aseh HaShlichim. So the Acts of the Apostles and also the precedents and legal decisions of the emissaries of Yeshua of Nazareth. Now, in the Mishnah, an order is called a seder, or seder, and the plural is starim. A tractate is a masechet. The plural of masechet is masechtot. A chapter is a perek. The plural is prakim. And then a verse is a mishnah, a plural of mishnayot, which is why, generally speaking, the Mishnah is actually often referred to as the Mishnah, the Mishnayot, because it's actually a collection of over 6,000 individual Mishnahs. A verse or a Mishnah is also called a halacha, and the plural is halachot. So generally speaking, we refer more to the first two of these, an order and a tractate. Now here's a picture. This isn't the actual Mishnah. This is the commentary, if I'm not mistaken, by the Rambam in Judeo-Arabic. But you can see here in this picture how it says Masechet. So there's the tractate. Sukkah. So this is the tractate of the Mishnah talking about a sukkah. What's a sukkah and what makes for valid sukkah, etc. This may surprise you. Throughout the Mishnah, a distinction is made between the written Torah and the oral Torah. Say what? That may have not been what you heard before. Surprise. The written Torah is referred to as the Torah shebichtav, the Torah which is in writing. If you know the verb katav, then you can hear it in this expression here. Torah she, which is be in katav, in writing. So Torah shebichtav is the Torah which is in writing. Rulings which come directly from the Torah are called me de oraita in Aramaic, mid oraita, and the Aramaic word for Torah is oraita, as you probably figured out, and min haTorah in Hebrew, and both of these mean from the Torah. So you can just imagine from this example of the written Torah, this is a Torah shebichtav, the Torah which is in writing. So rulings that come from this, we would definitely refer to as what? As me de oraita in Aramaic and min haTorah in Hebrew. The oral Torah is referred to as the Torah she be'al peh. I know that's a mouthful, right? Torah she be'al peh. You can kind of contract it to just 3 words. Say Torah she be'al peh. But if you want to be more specific, you would say Torah she be'al peh. And the Torah which is on the mouth. So can you recognize each of these words? I know it's a little choppy, right? Torah, you know that one. She, which ba is in, I guess, literally, all on peh, the mouth. So actually, literally, this is the Torah which is in on the mouth. and rulings which come from the rabbis are called me derabanan, which is Aramaic for from our rabbis. Me derabanan. You may have heard it said that the Jewish people don't differentiate between the written and oral Torah, or that the two are placed on the same level. Well, now you know that ain't true. I know that may be a little shocking for you to discover. The big takeaway here is that the Mishnah is how Israel interpreted and applied the Torah. And your bonus takeaway? That stuff about the Jewish people clumping the oral and written Torah together is an urban legend. So thanks for joining me in this study. This was exciting, and I can't wait to have you join me in our next lesson, continuing our introduction to the Mishnah, talking specifically about the process whereby the Mishnah was developed and why it was developed in the first place. And can't wait to get into some actual Mishnah snapshots where I will be showing you snapshots from the Mishnah specifically. As I'd mentioned previously, those examples of the Mishnah where it intersects with the New Testament, where the Mishnah sheds light on Yeshua of Nazareth and gives us some startlingly personal glimpses of him, and also helps us to understand his world and the world of his disciples better. Thanks again for joining me, and I can't wait for our next lesson. Shalom.